Here we go. Episode 10. Man, it's nuts.
It's Simon Hicks.
They'll loosen up that line. You won't see 11 players within 5 yards of that body.
I think I mentioned, a bludgeoning or something like that. That's what they came out and did.
7 state championships since 2014.
I tell you what, for those young men, there's no better feeling right now.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Fyffe Focus, the podcast, episode 10. We've made it to double digits. I can't believe it. And I smacked the microphone. I'm in such disbelief. We've made it to double digits, episode 10 of Fyffe Focus, the podcast, presented by our friends at Froggy Freeze. Let me tell you all about Froggy Freeze. If you haven't picked up already, we are 10 episodes in, 9 episodes in now of having Froggy Freeze as our title sponsor. They've got 3 different trailers that they wish to serve you from, okay? You call them up, you get them to any event that you need, family function, church function. I know school's getting ready to wind down. My gosh, some schools are graduating in 6 weeks or less. It's nuts. But if you need them at a function, a sporting event, maybe little league stuff, summer leagues coming up, call them. Get them over there. They're good people. They're willing to work with you. They'll do anything they can possibly do to help you out. They've got 35 sweet, delicious flavors. We got a man on the podcast tonight. I want to introduce Josh Ingram. You've heard his voice before on the Fyffe broadcast before. Josh, I'll give you a proper introduction in a moment, but what is your favorite shaved ice flavor?
It's hard to go wrong with orange and cream. I think if you get anything other than orange and cream, you're nuts. I mean, orange and cream's the top dog for sure.
That's a different one than what we've heard thus far. But nevertheless, I guarantee you Froggy Freeze has got it amongst their 35 flavors, and plus they can make a combo out of it. Give them a call. The number's 256-717-7239. Again, 256-717-7239. Somebody's watching TV on one of these places over here because I could tell it's about almost like a crime thriller or something. I don't know who's watching what.
It's a Titanic documentary, I think.
Oh. All right, then. Well, the man who just spoke, you know him as Greg Mears. The other man, we introduced him a moment ago, Mr. Josh Ingram. Josh is the play-by-play voice of the Brewer Patriots, coming to work with us at the Fun Media Group, and is a huge part of what we try to do on Coach's Breakfast and high school football in general. And Josh has a unique perspective. He's got family in Fyffe, but he played football up in Scottsboro and Woodville, and he's here tonight to give us that sort of extra balance. What is it like outside of Fyffe versus how it compares to Fyffe? And Greg knows that we've been doing this whole thing about position groups and telling folks kind of what they're like. We're going to get back to that next week when Drew Sims is able to join us. He has a school obligation tonight. JJ may join us. JB may join us a little bit later on, but we're going to go ahead and move on down the track. Let me tell you what's upcoming for tonight. I got to put on my blue glasses, my blue light glasses. These are not reading glasses. I'm not that old yet. What's upcoming tonight? As I mentioned, Fyffe compared to the rest with Josh Ingram. Collegiate Collision. I thought I was brilliant by coming up with that name. A Collegiate Collision. We talk 8A, Alabama and Auburn both a little bit. The UK press conference, if you missed it, the introduction of the new basketball coach at the University of Kentucky airs. It brings about a reason to talk about it. We'll get into that later. And Super League, is it coming to college football? Of course, the Where Was Greg t-shirt segment will mix in some of our 10 minutes of crap somewhere in there, as well as give you what's upcoming at Fyffe. Let's get things rolling with our guest of honor here this evening, Mr. Josh Ingram. Josh, as I alluded to a few moments ago, you've got a unique perspective on this high school football business because you've been kind of at both ends of the spectrum, both as a player and as a commentator for the Brewer Patriots. You started as player both at Scottsboro and at Woodville. Let's get into that side for a moment. Fyffe fans know all about the city of Scottsboro. They go down and shop it unclaimed all the time. They maybe have to go to the hospital down there for whatever reason. God bless you if you have to go there. But they traverse Scottsboro all the time, whether it's the movies, whatever, but they're not as keen or familiar with things like Scottsboro football, Scottsboro athletics being a bigger school, a higher up classification. So take me through Scottsboro football. Give me kind of your brief history there with Scottsboro.
Well, I lived in Scottsboro most of my life for about 14, 15-ish years. And, Friday nights were always a big part of my life. I had family that played When I was a 3-4-year-old kid, and I was always there, always at games, and so it was always a big part of just who I was and a part of my childhood growing up. So I always made it a point to be at Scottsboro games and that kind of stuff. And when I got to the junior high level, a lot of y'all listening will probably remember a family by the name of Nix, Coach Patrick Nix, Bo Nix, Caleb Nix, all of them. And Coach Nix was the head coach at the time whenever I got into the junior high level and 7th, 8th grade. And we run Coach Nix's offense, a more simpler version of his offense, but the type of football in 5A that you see these communities that they've got kids that play sports, their parents are teachers, their parents are lawyers, their parents are doctors or business owners in town or whatever. And my experience in 5A, it was just more about who your parents were than it was what kind of athlete you were and how you worked and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure it's like that in other places too. It's not just Scottsboro, but that just seemed to be the way it was here. And up until 7th or 8th grade, really, I always had to deal with that, whether it was football, baseball, whatever. Those were my two main sports. But football was just one of them things that I always enjoyed, and the atmosphere of Scottsboro games was something that I was just used to. So I guess that's part of the reason why I was just in it and about it all the time. And I still talk about it a lot now. But like I said, just because that's what I was used to. But growing up, that was what I wanted. It was just about Friday Night Lights. That was just everything I wanted to play on Friday night. I wanted hearing the crowd roar when you're running an 80-yard interception down the sideline. Just things like that was stuff that I thought about as a kid growing up.
So I'm muting both Greg and I a little bit because I also have some background noise coming through due to all this radio equipment. As folks can see, I'm in studio again, and I've got Greg muted to kind of help with that background noise, get it out. So Greg, when you decide it's time for you to talk, go ahead and unmute yourself, man, and let her rip. But let me ask you this, Josh. You go from a rich history in Scottsboro football, coming out of the tunnel at Pat Trammell Stadium. Everybody knows that is a historic stadium in and of itself. A lot of great matchups have happened there. You go from there down the road to little 1A Woodville High School that does not, with all due respect to Woodville, does not have the football power, the football rich history. What was that like? What did you experience in your time there?
It was truly a change. It really was. At my time at Scottsboro, that was when they were building the Meadows Morris Fieldhouse. So they were adjusting from the locker room underneath the stands over to a brand new multi-million-dollar field house, weight room, locker room, things like that. And when I moved to Woodville, they didn't even have a field house. They didn't even have a locker room at the stadium. When they went to halftime, they went through the fence, and there was a little field off to the left side of the stadium, and you went through that fence and you went down in that little field, and that was where you spent halftime. Because the field house, they shared a weight room with basketball, baseball, softball. Everybody shared that same little tiny weight room. It was like a little shed in between the baseball and the softball field, and it was on the other side of the school. So, when we got ready before a game, we got geared up and we had to walk around the school, through the woods and across the street through the parking lot to get into the football field. But my freshman year, they were getting to work on building a field house. Through the summer, they had crews coming through building the field house. And I think, I can't remember if it was the beginning of my freshman year or the sophomore year that they finally got it finished. I think it was into my sophomore year whenever we were actually moving into it. Because the year between my freshman and sophomore years, when we finally got to start using the weight room, we got new weight equipment. We were getting new helmets and those kinds of things. So it was moving into a good period too, because the year before they had come off a 37-game losing streak. Woodville did, as they had, I forget who the coach was before them, but the year before I moved, they had brought in Coach Jay Powell, and he'd played quarterback. I believe it was at North Sand Mountain. I could be wrong though. But I know he played football at UNA. He was a great offensive mind. And when I moved there, he was going into his second year. And the first 3 games of his first year, the year prior, they had won 3 games. They were 3-0 to start the season. And everybody, they were finally talking. Woodville's finally won a game, and they're on a little bit of a winning streak. This is the first time they've started the season 3-0 in their, at the time, 10-year history. And, they were, I don't want to disrespect this team in any way, but it was almost like Brindley Mountain kind of thing. Like when Brindley Mountain goes on a winning streak, everybody's tuned in, paying attention to see what's going on, because it's something that don't happen a lot. And the year before that, Coach Powell he had started 3-0, and then of course the rest of the season it got tougher, and they finished the season 3-7. But the next year I moved, and we advanced that a little bit. I think we finished the season 4-6, and I believe we were Woodville's first ever playoff team in 2015. So we made a little bit of history.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, as Greg is dealing with something there, but correct me if I'm wrong. Were you there in the singular year of who is now the head coach of the Scottsboro Wildcats, Tyler Van? Were you there for his first head coaching gig, his 1 year at Woodville?
I had graduated the year prior, but my sister being on the cheer team, I did get to see a lot of Coach Van and his staff and what they did, because he had totally redone the staff, which, I mean, at a 1A school, it's kind of like it is and has been at Fyffe. There's only, 3, maybe 4 coaches at best, but he had come in and had a whole new staff, and to see what they did with maybe 21, 22 players at best was pretty neat.
Yeah, so that all of that, and Greg will get in on this in just a moment here. I'm pretty sure I know what he's doing right now, and I think he's getting on one of the guys for not coming on. Here he comes back, but I want to ask you to kind of get this lead led in here as the station phones begin to ring. Sorry, we're closed. We're not answering. You got to do 3 Fyffe games with us in the playoff run last year. I believe it was 3. It was 3, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think you did second, third, and fourth round. You got to join us, and of course, having not played at Fyffe, you don't know the ins and outs of the locker room and things of that nature, and what that chemistry's been like for a long, long time now. It's not it's a chemistry that's carried over from year to year. It's not just something that they have to build every year. Of course, every team must build new chemistry with every passing year. But when you can develop that is sustainable, then you've really captured lightning in a bottle, if you will. When you watched Fyffe, and you've been around Fyffe, and your family, you have family in Fyffe, you've played at 1A, you've played in 5A, big school, small school, then you come and see what Fyffe does. How does that compare to what you've seen, what you've experienced, both as a player and even calling 5A football for the Brewer Patriots? How does all of that compare Fyffe-wise to the others? What's different in your mind?
Well, I can tell you, I learned more about Fyffe this year than I had ever known. Just working at the station this year, doing those 3 games in the playoffs. To me, the way it compares to 5A is the atmosphere. Just, I mean, crowds into the game. It's always standing room only. When you come in through the gate, I mean, there's people everywhere, and it don't matter who they're playing, whether it's 2 5-0, 6-0 teams coming in playing for a region championship, or whether it's an 0-4, 0-5 team coming in that hadn't won a game in a couple of years. It don't matter. The stands at Fyffe are always full, and people are always in tune with the game. And how it really compares to 1A, though, is a lot like just the team itself. It's a small team, maybe 30 to 50 players max, somewhere in that range. You've only got 3 or 4 coaches. You go out and, y'all been talking on the podcast the last couple of weeks about how on like Monday you do defense, Tuesday you do offense, because you've only got so much personnel to do so many things in practice a day. It was kind of that way in 1A. We would do shells on Monday. We would kind of talk about mistakes from Friday night. Tuesday'd be full pads. We'd kill each other. Wednesday, we would come out. We would kind of start putting our game plan together. Thursday we would finalize it, and Friday we'd go play. But it was real similar in that regard. And the thing that is different about Fyffe versus what I experienced at Woodville is just, I think the physicality part of the game is a little bit higher, and obviously in higher levels you go, it's totally different in 5, 6, 7A than it is 1 and 2A. But there's a big difference from just 1A to 2A. And 1A, the pace of the game seemed to be a little bit slower, seemed to be, it not as fast. And, like I said, being at Woodville, the crowd wasn't into it as much just because we were doing good to win 4 or 5 games. But, a place like Fyffe where the history is rich, and you got a head coach that's only lost 30-something times in a 30-something year career. I mean, you're destined for success. And the kids really buy into what Coach Benefield does. The community buys into what he does. They let him do his job. They don't try to coach around him. They let the coach do the head coach's job. And I think that's why you see the success you see at Fyffe.
Greg, jump on in here.
Well, Josh, I've got one question for you. Was you were talking about Scottsboro and the culture there about knowing, being somebody and having to do that. Was that with Nick's, or was that has that always been that way at Scottsboro as far as you know? Because it's the same thing at Plainview. I transferred from Plainview for the exact same reason.
Yeah, I think it's just always been like that, because if you look, Scottsboro gets a new head coach about every 3 to 4 years. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a parent or somebody on the school board or athletic board or whatever they have doesn't like the coach or what he's doing. You saw Chris Bell take a team that was struggling, and in 3 years goes from 1-9 to 8-2, 8-3, and is in the playoffs. And then here he is going into his 4th season, and they run him out because 1 or 2 parents don't like something that he does. And I've got a little bit more inside information than I probably should have.
Got ran down to Robertsdale, right? I believe that's the school that hasn't won a game in 3 years, 4 years, something like that.
They're in a tough 6, 7A region down there with, all the Gulf Shores and teams like that. But that's what happens at Scottsboro. The longest running coach I have ever seen at Scottsboro was Larry Morris. And he was there for 10, 15 years, however long it was. But he was a coach. He was a coach that was very well respected. He everything he did, he was one of the few head coaches that people have got on board with and actually let him do his job. Ever since Larry Morris has been gone, I haven't seen that. I think Freddie Tidmore's been there, Swain Morris has been there, Patrick Nix has been there, Don Jacobs. They've had 5 coaches just since Coach Morris retired back in 2000. I think 2004, 2005. I think 2004 was his last season, and they went, I believe, 10-2, lost to Athens in the 2nd or 3rd round of the playoffs. But that it's always been like that at Scottsboro. And when my dad, who graduated from Scottsboro, he back in the early 90s, he said it was the same thing. It's always been about who your parents are, who your family is, and that kind of thing. And that's not entirely why I moved. My family and I, we were moving out into the county, and it was going to cost us $600-700 a piece for me and my sister to go to city schools. So it made sense, and it was easier. Just the things that were going on in sports and the things that were going on in school, it was just easier for us moving out into the county to just go ahead and pack it up and let's go to a 1A school.
Gotcha.
So let me ask you this. We'll stay on this for just another minute or two before we move on in the show and the program. Couple of things come to mind. First of all, I want to ask you, why is it that way relative to the current situation now, or the very recent situation, maybe I should say, because it's not the current situation anymore. They have new leadership, and Tyler Van, a friend of mine, who I've gotten to be friends with over the last few years. I've called his games at North Sand Mountain his senior year, and got to know him on a professional level as a coach of the Sylvania Rams, which, by the way, is not the S that you're repping. That's the Skyline Vikings up there.
Yes.
I'll let you explain that one in a minute. But why is it that Coach Chris Bell, as you mentioned, came in and in 3-4 seasons' time legitimately turned that program into a winning machine, and albeit running an old style offense, running a very non-flashy defense, but everybody wants to look at that offense and say, well, you're running the option. Why was that an issue? Is the way? Listen, everybody knows we say this, I think, every week. Just like Greg, I was at Plainview, and I didn't play the sports, but I've gotten to, since I've gone to Fyffe and have been a part of the Fyffe family, been adopted by the family. I've seen a lot of cultural differences, if you will, in terms of the athletics. And one of the things that I see at Fyffe that a lot of schools I don't see is if you can play, you're going to play, because it's not about you. Well, I mean, it's just not about you. It's about the program, and it's about winning. It's about putting a win on the board. A coach isn't hired to make sure that you get a scholarship to go play for somebody else at a higher level. They're there to win for that school, and to get the best out of the young men that they do have. And if you can play, you're going to play. So why was that not enough for Scottsboro? Because all of a sudden, not only are they winning, but they're winning pretty handedly. And correct me if I'm wrong, third round of the playoffs. Is that right?
They went last year. They went to, I believe it was the third round.
Yeah.
I believe
so
last year.
Why was that not enough?
I think it comes down to more than just, it's not as much that being enough. I think it's just some of the things that are being done within the program that some of the parents don't like, whether it's, a coach, he tells a kid not to do something. The kid goes out and does it. Well, then he comes to practice and he gets punished for it. Well, then the kid goes home and he cries to mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy get mad. They complain to the school board, and they rally a bunch of parents behind them, and they go complain and make it so bad and make his life so miserable that he has no choice but to resign. And there's so much, and this is more than just football. This is the world. This is, celebrities, whatever. People are so ate up with self-glory that they cannot get out of their own way. And that's one of the biggest issues I've seen at Scottsboro athletics, Scottsboro, politics, everything. People are so ate up with self-glory that all they want to be is the center of attention. They want to be the reason that this happened. They want to be the reason that happened, and all this other kind of stuff. And to me, it ain't got nothing to do with what Coach Bell is doing or what he had done with the program, because in a couple years, in 2021, which was his first year, they went 3-7. They're finishing up their second year in 6A, tough schedule, coming off of Don Jacobs' tenure. He had finished 2-8 the year before, but Coach Bell goes 3-7 in 2021, 7-5 in 2022, and 8-3 in 2023. So you see that you're on the upward trend. Why are you going to go run a coach that has turned a program around in just 2-3 years, which you don't hear of often? It usually takes a coach, 4 or 5 years to turn a program around and to make it something elite. And you take a coach that has come into Scottsboro and done what he's done, which is really tough with just the atmosphere and culture that Scottsboro has, and you run him out of there. Why? You've now lost one of the best coaches that Scottsboro's had probably since Coach Nix's 12-1 season in 2016, and that was just because he had a good quarterback in his son that has ran that offense since he was 5 years old, and Bo had the players around him that made that team good, because it wasn't just the Bo Nix show. He had people around him, and that's the thing, is they were losing a lot of that talent. They were losing a lot of that talent, a lot of the personnel. Coach Nix wanted to do some things within the program. He wasn't going to be allowed to, so he took his kids and he left. And that's the thing, is it's just too much. Too much things, like too many things that people want to control. They can't get out of their own way. And that's part of the reason why you see coaching changes at Scottsboro every 3 to 4 years.
Let me say this too, as a new window begins to populate here, and we welcome Jeremy Johnson under the broadcast in just a moment. There he is, talking Fyffe comparative to other places with Josh Ingram, and Jeremy Johnson gets his audio connected up. Welcome JJ into this week's episode 10 of the podcast. But as we continue the conversation, I'm reminded of a story, and I may have shared it on this podcast before, but Greg will very much know what I'm talking about when I say this, because not only does he know Coach Benefield and has gotten to know him, but he played for the same man that Coach Benefield played for during his time at Fyffe. And this is where Coach Benefield got this from. So after that Geraldine game last year, and Fyffe lost it, and to Geraldine, and frankly, in talking with a lot of kids, in talking or seeing their body language, they frankly were embarrassed, not necessarily by the loss, but just by the effort that was put out. They didn't feel like they'd put their best foot forward. They were embarrassed for themselves. And so that next Monday, I show up, and I'm out getting to watch the last 15, 20 minutes of practice. Regular practice gets over, and coach calls all the linemen over, and they go working on drills, and they go working specifically on snapping the football, trying to get ahead of that problem. And he spent probably 20, 30 minutes with them. I think Tucker has alluded to this when he was on very early in the podcast season with us. And when it was over, coach begins to walk my way, and I'm standing at the fence at the football field. And for those who may not have ever been to Fyffe football field, first of all, you got to get out to a game. But second of all, the practice field is legitimately right behind the homestand. You just go out the gate, and there it is. I was standing there at the entrance to the gate, and Coach Benefield, a ways off, just kind of started, "Hey." And I said, "Hey, coach." And I could tell he was a little confused. And as he got closer, he realized who I was. And out of his mouth, he said, "Boy, I was fired up." And I kind of looked at him. He said, "I thought you were a parent ready to gripe me out over last Friday night, and I am not in the mood for it. You can say what you need to say. I am not in the mood for it. I was about to tear you up." And that's, Greg, that's a coach that A, learned it from his coach and Coach Haushalter, your coach, but B, that's a coach who really doesn't care. He says, "I'm going to run my program the way I see it needs to be run." And that's why there's a winning culture at Fyffe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A couple of stories about that stuff. Josh, like you were talking about, my daughter's graduated from Hewitt Trustful and had a really good softball coach down there. And he had taken them, and they had, they'd become not a powerhouse, but a very good team, and had a third baseman that during practice didn't dive for a ball. He asked her why. She said she didn't want to get her uniform dirty. So he made her and some of the rest of the team roll around on the ground to get dirty. He immediately, the parents, like you're talking about, immediately came in and got this guy suspended. He was suspended for like 2 or 3 weeks. They were getting ready to start the playoffs, state playoffs. Luckily, somebody up in the, the higher administration realized that this is stupid. We can't let parents run our program like that, and then reinstated him. But I'm just sitting there thinking, I can't imagine telling one of my coaches that I didn't do something because I didn't want to get dirty. How that would have played with Coach Haushalter, Adam, like you're talking about. He'd have stuck my face in the mud and rolled me around in it real quick, and then dared anybody to say anything about it. So, and it's like you're saying, Josh, they get away. They can't. I guess our kids are too special now. They're my little buddy or something. They can't just let coaches coach. And it really is a ruin of many a program.
Yeah, and I think, to y'all's point, is that's one of the unique things. Nobody wants to see their kid mistreated or whatever, but I know for me, I want my kid coached hard. And if he got yelled at, or if he whatever the case may be, that's part of growing up. And that's part of growing up to me. That's part of him being tougher, because the reality is you get outside the fantasy world where life is not easy. Life's not easy. And I wanted him to be coached that way. And, I've never been one as a parent to run to my kid's defense and assume immediately that little Johnny, or in my case, little Micah, all 6'4" of him, he was innocent, or he
just
didn't
had a birthday the other day, didn't he?
Yeah, 21. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Happy birthday, big guy.
Man, you're an old man.
Man, I went and worked out with him yesterday. We spent time together. I didn't see him during the week when his birthday happened. Man, I'm telling you.
You worked out?
Yeah, I did, believe it or not. I did. Hey, and by the way,
that better be the Lord calling.
By the way, it hit me so hard, I fell asleep. This side of my face is probably red I've been over here asleep a while ago. Greg's like, "You gonna get on?" I'm like, "Whoa, I thought it was 7." So apologies for that.
That's all right. We'll just dock your pay.
We interrupt this week's podcast to bring you an important announcement from our friends at Froggy Freeze. We want you to stop on by the Isbell Field Airport, otherwise known as Fort Payne Airport on Airport Road in Fort Payne. Saturday, April 27th at 9 a.m. from 9 to noon, they have Meet a Machine, and our friends at Froggy Freeze are going to be there to support this wonderful cause. It's for children and adults alike. Adults are $5. Children are free to get in. And we want you to go on by and support this cause because all 100% of the proceeds from it are going to go to benefit the Children's Advocacy Center of DeKalb County. And again, our friends at Froggy Freeze are going to be there. You can check out all the machines at the Fort Payne Field Airport, the Isbell Field Airport has to offer, and get you a sweet treat from our friends at Froggy Freeze while you're there. And again, all proceeds are going to benefit the DeKalb County Children's Advocacy Center. Stop on in. Enjoy it Saturday, April 27th, 9 to noon. You can go to the Red Devil Radio Show Facebook page or the Fyffe High School Facebook page and find the poster. It's got a QR code that you can scan with your phone and purchase tickets. Again, 100% of the proceeds going to DeKalb County Children's Advocacy Center. It's Meet a Machine, 9 to 12 at the Fort Payne Airport, Isbell Field Airport off Airport Road in Fort Payne.
Tougher kids are at 5. They're tougher. They may not be more athletic than the other teams they play, especially when you start getting in the rounds. They're always tougher. And that Geraldine game last year, that's one of the few times I've ever watched a 5 team, and I said, they battled, but they got out physical. At least that game. Of course, they recovered really well. Right.
Well, they got humbled, and one final thought on that before we transition, Josh, and you were talking about specifically at Woodville trying to build that culture because Woodville doesn't have it. And sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it just takes the right guy to get in or the right group of players to get in there. Sometimes it's a combination. But when you talk about these losses, like you had mentioned. Woodville had I think you said 37 or something to that effect, losing streak.
I think it was 37 games.
At some point, one of those has got to humble you. One of those has got to, what am I trying to say here? One of those things, one of those losses or something that happens in the course of one of those games has got to put something in you that says enough is enough. And we've got to change something, whether it be a coach changing a philosophy, whether it be a player changing his philosophy, his approach to practice, his approach to the weight room, which is, we've talked about it, I think, for a month now, every podcast, which is something that Coach Benefield did himself way back several years ago, and is a big reason as to why Fyffe is on the run that they're on. But how do you do that? Because outside of Drew, you're the most recent player that, at least, especially on this panel right now, you're the closest to what these young people are now versus what Greg was when he played, Drew when he played. Mindsets are different for kids these days. So how do you approach getting that sort of mentality to allow those types of things to humble you, to make you change your attitude, to make you change your discipline? How do you do that?
It's tough. Because that you talked about kids changing and attitudes being different nowadays. If Coach Hauswalter was coaching today, he'd probably be arrested for the way he handled things.
Oh yeah,
because
well, if he shoved Greg's face in the mud, yeah.
The way that he
I got a story.
Then the way he handled things then you can't do now because kids, they can't stand to be told no, and when they're not told no. They're uncoachable. You can't tell them anything because they think they got it all right. And, I'm turning 23 in 2 weeks, but, I feel like I'm a little more mature for what most 22-year-olds are nowadays, especially some of the ones that I went to school with. But, it's hard to discipline kids because they can't stand being told no. And uncoachable kids become unemployable adults. And you get out.
Absolutely.
In high school, you live in this fantasy world. Every teachers are walking around on edge. You get all this special treatment. In the world, you don't get that. Same thing on a field. Coach has to be careful with how he handles things, how he disciplines kids. You know, if he makes them run until they start throwing their stomach up, then you know you get caught up with the right parent, you're going to have issues. It's hard to do that at a 1A school because 1A schools like Woodville, who's only been around since 2005, it's hard to keep a coach for longer than a year or three because I think Coach Powell was the longest running coach, and he was there for 6 or 7 years. You know, he came in 2014, and I think the 2019 season was his last year. And Coach Van, you know, he was only at Woodville for 1 year, and he had the best season that Woodville's ever had at 5-5. His name got put out on the block, and in 1 year he's gone and he goes and he has major success at Sylvania.
Instantly, by the way, just
instant
almost
success.
like instant coffee. I mean, just boom.
Exactly.
Adam, before we transfer, let me tell you one householder story. Y'all talking about him getting arrested now. We thought,
go ahead.
Even back in '79, we thought he was in trouble. Listen, so we're having a bad day of a Monday practice or something, and it's the end of the practice, and all of a sudden he tells us just to stop and start running. And he said something along the lines of, "By the time you're done running today, you'll think you're an effing track team." All right, so we all start running. We're running. Well, this sophomore dude takes off his helmet and lays it down, which, you know, when you're running, you don't do that.
You don't do that.
Yeah. So householders screaming about who this helmet is. And, obviously you can tell who doesn't have on a helmet. He picks up the helmet and he's standing maybe 5 or 6, feet from him, again, very colorfully asking him why he decided to take off his helmet. And he tells him to put on his helmet and he throws it at him, expecting the boy to catch it. Well, the kid doesn't catch it. He just stands there and it hits him square in the nose. And of course, blood goes everywhere. And even in '79, we're jogging as seniors going, I don't know if he's going to be our coach when the season starts. And like you say, now today, he's gone. He's getting sued. And all because, a kid did something stupid. I mean, it was really his fault. He could have caught the thing. He just stood there, smacked him right square in the face. Them old bike helmets too, man. They were heavy. Woo.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't have been the story that got shared around town. It wasn't that he couldn't catch the helmet. It was Coach brutally attacked him.
Brutally attacked him.
Story,
absolutely.
especially now in 2024.
Yeah.
That's I'm going to say this, and then we'll move on. Even though I didn't play for Coach Benefield, I never had the opportunity to meet Coach Househalter before he passed away. I do feel like Coach Benefield is my coach. I've learned a lot from him in the time that I have been on the radio crew, whether it be as a little youngling sideline reporter in my first year, making a stupid boneheaded mistake in a question I asked him at the end of a ball game, to just learning the game of football in general, how the formats work, how Fyffe works, making connections with other coaches, and when I need something, to be honest. I know I can give Coach a ring or shoot him a text, and sometimes he takes a little while to answer back because he's got other things he's focused on. But I do feel like he's my coach. I've learned a lot from him, but frankly, he doesn't give a darn. If I can be honest, that's his program, and he gave us a gift as a radio show back in, I believe it was 2015. I wasn't handling the interview duties of him at that point for the pregame stuff like I do now. Ethan Wilkerson was doing it. And he and Ethan are actually related by blood down the line somewhere. But anyway, Ethan was handling that. And Ethan walked in there one day and he gave us all some of his old coaching shirts. And I still have mine to this day, even though I can't wear it. It's about 3 times my size now because I was a lot heavier then. I still have it just because it was a gift from Coach Benefield, much like what you have, Greg, at your house in that football signed by the championship team. And I feel like he's my coach. But again, he doesn't give a darn because it's his program. He doesn't care what I think, even though I may goof up on the radio. We might goof up and say something he doesn't like. Frankly, he's going to call us out on it because he does want us to be right. Let me put it like that. He wants us to be right about his program, but at the end of the day, he doesn't care. It's his program. And I think that's a lot of how coaches should operate. You go into a program, take the reins over. Well, if you're going to a place where they won't let you have the reins, God help you. because I'm going to steal your words there, Josh. You're going to get run out of town. And I know a bit of the situation that you're alluding to. I'm sure you got a lot more insight into it. I don't want to get into that in this episode, but I know exactly what you're alluding to. And it makes for a tough situation. And at Fyffe, he has been allowed to do what he needs to do to get this team where they need to be from a winning standpoint, first of all. But second of all, and most importantly, to grow young men, to make young men. And isn't that, JJ, isn't that the goal of a coach ultimately, especially at the high school levels, to make young men?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know it'd be my goal in any form is to try to help people and help people get better. I think in addition to Coach Benefield, and I appreciate the fact that he don't give a rip. To be quite
Yeah,
honest with you,
yeah,
in a world where everybody panders to other people and tries to save face or look a certain way or all that, he just is who he is. Now, I will say this as well, and I think he said it before. I give credit to the parents in that community as well
yeah,
for allowing him to coach the way he coaches. And there's coaches that that don't get that. And I appreciate that it's a cultural thing in Fyffe.
yeah,
I mean, we realized that. I moved in, gosh, now, I mean, that's been years ago. All the kids, my last one's graduating this year. So it's been 12 plus years ago, right? Uh, Probably 16 or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. And you figure it out real quick. It's cultural. Moms and dads dads played for Househalter or played for Benefield early on. And, if little Johnny come home and he's upset because Coach Benefield ran him too much, or Coach Househalter busted his nose with a football helmet, they don't run up there. They're just like, well, hey, suck it up, buddy.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
and it, and,
yeah,
it, and that's a parenting thing too, and it makes the
yeah,
kids tougher. And so it's a partnership. And that's one thing I've always realized is, in the minute where parents stop being partners with the football coach, or with any coach for that matter, that's where the breakdown happens, because I feel like it's a partnership. It's a community. It's parents partnering with a coach. Yeah, and keeping their mouth. Hey, by the way, just keeping their mouth shut and letting the coach coach.
yeah,
We can spout off on here about whoever because, but obviously we don't know what we're talking about. They're the ones making millions of dollars, making the decisions they make. But ultimately, it's about just keeping your mouth shut, letting the coach coach.
yeah. Let's move on. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here with our next segment here called Collegiate Collision. And with this, some of this will be sort of our 10 minutes of crap. I kind of liked incorporating that a little bit, just kind of get our free range thoughts, if you will, like free range chickens out here. We're just kind of going everywhere with it. A little bit out of order here. I want to start instead with, on your sheets, guys, the UK press conference. I feel like that won't take us near as long to get through. So Mark Pope is introduced. I knew JJ would like that. That's why I went there first. Mark Pope gets introduced, former Kentucky basketball player on the championship team from '96, gets introduced as the men's basketball coach at Kentucky after several failed attempts at guys like Nate Oates, Scott Drew, even Coach Hurley of the UConn Huskies. We mentioned him last week. I made the comment that he's the best coach in college basketball, bar none right now. Nobody's sniffing his coattails, I believe were my exact words. And Greg, you followed that up by saying, and he knows it. He certainly does know it. He turned down a
He does.
heck of an offer. He turned down a gold mine to stay at UConn. He knows what he's got right now, and he knows probably something about Kentucky that we don't know, frankly, because Kentucky, they might not be elite right now. They might not be one of the elite of the elites, but it is still a primetime basketball job. And as sort of illustrated by the fan support that showed up to this Mark Pope introduction, where there were over 20,000 people in attendance for a press conference, an introductory press conference. They filled it up in that arena. And if they'd have pulled out the other floor seats and had the other, 25, added 6,000 more seats and pulled out, they probably would have filled it up. But the reason they didn't is because they did something unique. They pulled a bus into there and unloaded the entire '96 championship team, plus former players of Kentucky, big time guys like John Wall and other guys like that have come through there, former coaches, And then here comes Mark Pope, and that place went nuts. JJ, give me your take on this UK press conference and Mark Pope as he stands now as the head basketball coach of the Kentucky Wildcats, his alma mater.
What the heck? This is where we're at. We can't just have a press conference. We got to make everything a spectacle and a show. And do you think for 1 minute that Mark Pope wanted that kind of introduction? Because those same people, when he loses 3 SEC games, or he loses 2-3 games in a row, or he loses games that they think that they will be screaming to that extent, saying, "I knew it. I knew he wasn't the right coach." It happens. They think, hey, these schools think I'm gonna get a former player, a successful player, and that'll fix everything. Nebraska, Scott, we're gonna hire Scott Frost for the football coach. How'd that work out? They run him out of town. Alabama hires Mike Shula when he wasn't their choice. He wasn't their first choice. The first choice decided he wanted to spend money at a strip club and do other stuff. That didn't work out, and this ain't gonna work
one
out
good
either.
year. One good year.
This is not gonna work out for him. I would have cringed if I walked off that bus and I saw what they'd done. Now,
are you saying they set him up for failure?
No, not necessarily. He's just gonna fail, period. But that making that big spectacle. Here's why they did it though. They had to one up Arkansas, because I don't know if y'all watched the intro to Cal.
That I did
Cal's
not.
introduction. They had to do better than that. They had to go over the top, and everybody knows he wasn't their first choice. He was their probably third, fourth choice. Hey, look, I guess when you get, I don't know what the specs of his contract are. I guess the buyout makes him feel all right. I don't know, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
We all know that they settled, and he would not have that job if he had never played at Kentucky. I mean, everybody knows that. So what it feels like to me is that was a little bit of a Wizard of Oz deal. They're sending these players out here. They're pulling the bus up, and they're saying, "Oh, don't pay attention to this man behind the curtain over here. Oh, don't look over here." They're trying to draw attention from the fact that they had to settle for their fourth, fifth, sixth choice probably. And again, if he doesn't have a Kentucky tie, there's no way he gets that job.
No,
so they're trying to pump him all up. No, not at all.
If my mother-in-law ends up listening to this, she's going to love your Wizard of Oz reference, just so you know.
Never mind the man behind the curtain, boys.
No.
He's our man.
No, he's not. And I'll tell you this, and I said it last week, and we'll say it again. Kentucky is not an elite program. They were at one time. They're not now, and they're not going to be. They're not going to be in the near future, unless he brings some 25-year-old men to come play basketball from BYU with him. You know,
they can't drink any caffeine, so maybe they can drink bourbon. They can't drink caffeine. Can they drink bourbon?
Graduate transfers or something.
So let me toss this to the other guy on the panel and get him involved here, because many folks may not realize when we talked last week about the bracket challenge and revealed Robert Newsom as the winner, the guy with the label Josh Ingram here tonight is the proprietor, the owner, shall I say, of the bracket called Josh's Uninformed Decisions, that ended up beating myself, Greg, JJ, Drew, and Jonathan. Yes, all 5 of the normal guys that's on the broadcast. The guy that made his bracket within like 4 hours of the tournament starting beats all of us, gets into the top 5. I think you were right at 5. Where's the camera? There's the camera. I think you were right at 5. I know you may not be as into the collegiate basketball scene as what you may be at high school, because you've got the Skyline S on your hat there. Which, by the way, we didn't tell people you're the PA announcer for Skyline. That's why you got that on, and you support the Vikings up there, who don't have a football team. But give me your take on this, Mister. I'm gonna throw a bracket out in less than 4 hours. I'm gonna crap it out my rear end and get top 5 in the finish. Tell me your take on this Kentucky situation.
You know, I hardly obviously with it being uninformed decisions, I hardly pay any attention to college basketball. I'll keep up with Alabama and just see what they do, just to kind of follow along. And when people talk about it, just to stay in the conversation, that's about it. And our youth pastor at church, he's a big Tennessee fan, so he keeps up with Tennessee everything, Tennessee golf, Tennessee track. I don't even know if they have an equestrian team, but if they do, he probably keeps up with that too.
Are they in everything school?
I don't know. I really don't. I think they have.
Go ahead.
I think they have a good football coach right now, and they're in a good place with that. But I'll leave that for another day. But no, this introduction thing it's strange. I agree with JJ. It's way over the top. It's too much. Why can't we just have a press conference? I mean, we saw Kalen DeBoer get off a plane and go shake hands through a fence. I mean, that's about the extent of what you saw there. I don't understand why we got to make it this big thing. How he'll do, I have no clue. I didn't pay attention to what he did at BYU. I know being
second
a Mormon,
place and third place or lower every year, basically. I mean, he's about an average winner in the Mountain West Conference.
What I have heard on other radio shows that he's been to the tournament several times. He's never won a tournament game.
Correct.
Can you do that with Kentucky? I don't know. I really don't. A lot of people are questioning how he's going to be recruiting wise, because he don't really have the same limitations at Kentucky as he might have at a BYU type of school. So I'm curious to see.
He's got NIL now.
Yeah, well, now that he's in the SEC, I'll probably pay attention just a little bit more. Because, I mean, when I was a kid, Kentucky basketball was college basketball. Because, I mean, that was the period when they had John Wall and those kinds of players, and everybody paid attention to what they did. But, yeah, I don't know a whole lot about it because I don't pay much attention. But I know is he going to go with an analytical type of approach, or how's he going to be recruiting wise? Is he going to get somebody to set up the NIL stuff and kind of take over that and pay attention to that? Because pretty much nowadays, college athletics, you can buy championships. That's pretty much how it is. I mean, You can go out, you can get 23 to 25-year-old players that want to stay just because they're going to make more playing college basketball than they will if they go ahead and enter the NBA draft or enter the NFL or whatever the case may be. College now has turned into the new pros.
Yeah. Then I got to ask, how the heck did you beat all us in the bracket challenge less than 4 hours before it gets started? Did you end up just throwing balloons up against the wall? Did you or up against or darts at balloons or something? How did you beat us if you don't follow it? I mean, gosh, I'm bitter about this, man. I'm bitter. I'm bitter.
I say I don't follow it, but there's people that I work with that they follow it. I just went off things that I've heard them say, scores that I had seen on Sports Center or whatever. I kind of looked at the record and looked at the team and thought, because at work they had printed out these little papers that had the bracket on it, had the records and all that. And I got to looking at that paper thinking, if Alabama makes it to the Sweet 16 and they play North Carolina, do they have what it takes to beat North Carolina? I see somebody like some underdog like a Oakland coming out and beating Kentucky or things like that. I didn't have Kentucky losing that game, but I was looking at things like that,
except people in Oakland.
Just looking at the records. I was just kind of basing it off of what underdog team name do I think can upset? Like, what headline do I think that I'll see on Sports Center or see online or whatever? And I just talking about making the bracket a couple hours before. I knew it started at it was like 11 o'clock that morning.
Yeah.
I had got off work 5 o'clock that morning, went laid down in the bed, got my phone out, made the bracket, entered the groups, and that was it. Because I've never made a bracket ever.
Me neither.
I usually just watch March Madness and that's it. Because I know that most brackets are busted after the first game, really. But I'm just like, I'm not going through all this bracket madness. I'm not paying attention to any of that. I'm not going to do any of it. And then I get a text from Adam about 3 days before the tournament starts saying, "Hey, do you want to join our groups?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll do it for the fun of it." But I said, I'm not going to do anything major. I'm going to be down in last place or whatever. And then I ended up keeping up with the rankings way more than I thought I would. And then sure enough, at the end of the tournament, I looked down and I'm in 5th place. So I guess I can't say I did too bad.
I'll just tell you this. We're going to move on. congratulations on beating the five of us. That's all you get. There's no consolation prize for fifth place. Sorry, but
Yeah.
we don't believe in that. We don't even give second place. We only give dinner for two to the first place winner. Anyway,
bragging rights.
let's move forward.
I'll take it.
Bragging rights. There you go. Let's move forward and talk a little bit of spring scrimmage day, specifically A Day at Auburn and Alabama, both on the same day there. Or I think within a week of each other anyway. That's how it was. But anyway, I didn't get to watch as much of the Auburn spring game as I would like to, mainly because like ESPN, CBS, and all they're not putting them out there anymore. They're I don't know why. They're just not. Alabama was the only spring game in the entire country to get the main telecast, the main network.
Mhm.
Everybody else was on SEC Network or Plus or ESPN Plus or whatever. But specifically looking at Auburn for a moment here, Justin Hawkinson of the Auburn Observer, I'm calling bullcrap on you, pal, because he put it out there that there was 30,000 plus people in the stands for that Auburn spring game. That's a load of horse hockey. There's no way, Hawkinson. It's a load of horse hockey, Hawkinson. There's no way there were 30,000 people there. The picture I saw was like somewhere around the middle of the second quarter. If you're not at the spring game by middle of the second quarter, you're not showing up. So there was no way there was 30,000 people there. I'm not going to dump on the support aspect of it per se, but your take, guys, really quick on the Auburn situation with Hugh Freeze now getting ready to finally, I guess you might, in his eyes, might say he's now getting a chance to really put a stamp on the program. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Well, I'll say first, I agree with you. I saw the picture. That looked like a 1A state championship game crowd is what it looked like to me.
Good comparison. Good comparison.
And so, look, I don't think you read too much into these games. It's just a spectacle. It's just something for the fans. It's just something for people. So I don't know. I don't know any of the Auburn results. I did watch a little bit of the Alabama game, but yeah, that's bull. Of course, they're going to feel like they need to inflate the numbers because their little brother, and they got and I'm sure you're about to mention Alabama, but they doubled them up, if not more. They more than doubled them up in attendance. So that's bull. Same old Auburn.
So listen, first off, there was probably 30,000 people there, but 20,000 of them were still rolling the trees because UConn beat Alabama. So you got to count those people. You got to count those people outside the stadium, okay?
Yeah. A week later.
No, I don't.
Yeah, a
There's
week
no
later, they're still out there. But
2 weeks
the only thing I don't understand about the whole thing is, man, Hugh Freeze is a great coach. He did wonders at Ole Miss. But, man, I still, again, as an idiot sitting here on a podcast, question that quarterback choice. I mean, I don't see it.
He loves him. I've heard interviews.
I know, and I don't know. I mean, I thought they were going to go out and get somebody in the portal. Like I said, I mean, hey, being an Alabama fan, I hope he's there, under snap every freaking game of the year. But if he is, he's going to be another 6-6.
Yeah.
6 or 7-8 or 7-5, something like that. I don't see him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 72,000 on the other side of the state from east to west, 72 plus thousand there in Bryant Denny. You go back to 2007's A-Day, Nick Saban's first A-Day. Kalen DeBoer is only about 20,000 short, and I say only very loosely because, I mean, my goodness, what other school do you get 72,000 people plus for a spring game? Just as JJ said, to really watch nothing. There's nothing of consequence that's going to come out of this. It's just a final practice. It's a final wrap up on what has occurred during the spring. But you look at a picture from his last spring game at Washington versus his first at Alabama, and it's a major drastic difference.
Yeah.
Just you guys were talking back and forth during the game. What impressed you?
Well, for me, the offense, obviously, and I think we know somewhat what we're going to get with Kalen DeBoer offensively. I really more specifically the run game. The run game looked really good. Jam Miller looked really good. Bernard, the transfer, the receiver, looked good. Milroe looked good. I will say this, Simpson, and I heard guys from next round call him the.
No, we lost him there. Well,
I
Greg,
listened
until
to
we
the
get
next round,
JJ
but I
back, go
don't.
ahead.
I didn't get to see a whole lot of it. I was traveling, but I saw the first part of it. And the biggest thing I saw was, again, the offense, the running of the ball. 3rd and 1 became a running down, thank God, instead of having to throw the ball, which, again, I think we all scream about that stuff. But then, you get in that format and you start worrying about, you look at how good your offense is and you start wondering about your defense.
Yeah.
Okay, are they this good because they're that good, or is the defense that bad? So, and I'm old school. I wish it would just be a normal scrimmage. I hate these ones where the defense can score points for a sack and all that stuff. I just rather see them go out and make it like a regular scrimmage, as much game like. But, it is what it is. And offense looked fantastic. Quarterbacks looked fantastic. And JJ, we didn't get to hear what you said about Ty Simpson, so spit it out, big man.
I mean, he's a king of spring, man. He has good spring practice or spring game. I did not like what I saw with Austin Mack, and I know he's down the depth chart a little bit. He's the transfer from Washington. I didn't think he looked that well. Matter of fact, the question was asked, were there any low snaps? I saw one low snap, and that was when he was in the game. I think part of that was because he wasn't paying attention.
JJ, that's impossible because it was because of Milroe's cadence. I mean, you just go ask Day up in Ohio State, and he'll tell you. There's no way there was only one.
Yeah, to echo what the guys said this morning on next round, to echo them, I'd be curious to see how the snaps went at Ohio State, since McLaughlin is so awesome and everything. But yeah, hey, so I'm gonna say one more thing right here about the spring game, and it's not anything to do with football, but what the heck has happened to the grass down there at Bryant-Denny? I've never seen it look that bad. My goodness.
They did do a turf renovation last year. I want to say it was May or June of last year. They did a complete overhaul in a very short amount of time of the stadium because they were not going to use it for scrimmages during the summer. They're not allowed to by NCAA law. So they did an overhaul in there. I read somewhere earlier today, being Monday, I read where they were trying to do something, the same grass that they put down on golf courses. A lot of that trying to be like Bermuda and things of that nature. And the AD did address it. Greg Byrne addressed it and said, we're very aware of it. It wasn't acceptable. And they're gonna work on it. But they also had put in a new drainage system when they put the new grass in. So there was a lot of speculation that something had malfunctioned and they weren't aware of it and caused the grass to die within the drainage system. So I imagine here in the next week or two, we're going to see some reports of them digging up that grass, digging up that ground inside the stadium and making it look pretty ugly for at least a few months this summer.
Hey, I got a question though. So you're telling me that the NCAA says I can go buy a player for $1 million, but I can't let him practice in my field in my stadium? That's against the law.
Yeah, good job,
Typical
NCAA. You're the best.
If that's golf turf, that's a hell of a divot they just took. My God.
Here's all I want to see in the next few weeks. I'm going to wait on the UK football program to announce Alabama's former head groundskeeper as their new groundskeeper. Let him get off a bus with a big plot of sod there.
There was more divots in that A-Day game than we saw all week long in the Masters. So,
hey, Skyline up there. Give me your impression of Kalen DeBoer after his first spring at Alabama.
Well, I didn't get to see a whole lot of the A-Day game just because of my work schedule and working 7 nights a week, and I ended up being asleep during the game. But I went back and watched the highlights, and I like what I saw from the offense. I'm not going to read too much into the defense just because of the format of the game and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to – now, if our defense looks like that come week 4, week 5 of the season, then I might worry a little bit. But Offensively, I think they look good. Jam Miller, I love what I saw from him. Bernard looked impressive. He only had 3 catches, but it was like 130 something yards.
Mm-hmm.
So I like what I saw from him. I thought Jalen Milroe looked great. Ty Simpson looked good. Austin Mack didn't do anything impressive for me. Of course, there wasn't a whole lot of highlights from, once you get to the 3rd string, but I thought offensively they looked good. I like what I saw. I think DeBoer is going to be. I think he's going to be fine. I think people are reading too much into it being like somebody coming in. It's people are reading it as the whole Bear Bryant situation thing again, of where he was going downhill. His team started to suck. They bring somebody else in, and then Alabama's terrible until Nick Saban takes over. So
the guy that owns that right there is one of those guys you're talking about. Just saying.
I don't think it's like that. Kalen DeBoer is taking over a program it's totally different than what Nick Saban came into and what he took over 17 years ago. DeBoer's coming in with everything laid out perfectly for him, and coaching in this NIL world and that kind of thing. I think DeBoer, he's more in line with that, and I think Alabama will be okay with him at the helm. He's obviously a good coach. He's had success everywhere he's went. I'm a little curious to see how it's going to be in the SEC, because we all know that the SEC and football, just the Southeastern as a whole, it's a totally different atmosphere and a different culture of football than it is up in the northwestern part of the U.S.
Hey, I was actually on campus, and I mean, going to school there at Alabama through the whole Bear Bryant transition, and it's extremely different. I mean, of course, Bear Bryant, one of the best coaches, if not, 2nd, 3rd best coach ever. But that team, I mean, the cupboard wasn't bare, but it was getting very, very lean. Let's put it that way. So I think DeBoer is, like you're saying, Josh, he stepped into a completely different situation, and I think he'll succeed there if we as fans and boosters give him the opportunity.
Yeah. Let the coach coach.
Let the coach. That's right. So we're going to actually kind of skip a part of that segment, because I was hoping that the guy that sort of introduced the next topic would actually get to be here tonight. He's not with us, so we're going to save it for next week, hoping he can be with us, talking about super conferences coming to collegiate football, and I want to get as many takes as we can on that, so we'll address that next week, guys. Let's move forward now into the Where Was Greg t-shirt segment. He's not hiding it from us tonight on this episode. Greg, the Auburndale... what does that say?
They're actually the Bloodhounds, but this is a little shorter. This is the Hounds. So they're Auburndale Bloodhounds. Let's see, they are southwest of Orlando. Little 6A school there in Florida. Fantastic little program. School? Yeah, a little 6A school there in Florida. Florida's got like 8 AA. I mean, there's so many different classifications in Florida. It's crazy. I can't even keep up with it now. But they're just outside of Lakeland, a little southeast or southwest of Orlando. And their claim to fame is basically Tracy McGrady. For you NBA fans, that's where he went to school. But for you, Adam, as a Falcon fan, do you remember somebody named Chauncey Davis? By any chance?
I do.
He went to Auburndale. He's an Auburndale alum as well. That played there at the Falcons for like 5 or 6 years.
I did not know that.
Yep.
I'm not a Falcons historian buff per se, like I am Alabama. I could share some embarrassing stuff about what I used to know about Alabama before they did all the renovations, even to the stadium and crap. But I've never been like that for any other team. But I do know the name.
Yeah,
had no idea.
So that's their again. Obviously, Tracy McGrady is all over the campus. Again, I don't know. It's been a 6, 7, 8, 9 months since I've been there and sent y'all pictures of that stadium and stuff. But you can see from the football field, the gym is kind of in the background, and of course it's Tracy McGrady, gymnasium, and he's got signs up in the football field and stuff. So that's their claim to fame. I just love the name Bloodhounds.
Yeah,
good little kind of like Smokey. Blue tick hound.
Got to see T-Mac play. Gosh, I was 14 or 15 years old. The Atlanta Hawks did a Christian night on like a Saturday night or a Sunday night, I guess it was. And my youth pastor took the youth group of like 30-something kids to the Hawks Magic game. And even though we were in Phillips Arena. I don't even think it's Phillips Arena anymore, but at the time it was Phillips Arena. Even though we were in there in the home of the Hawks, most of us guys who knew anything about basketball, we didn't want the Hawks to win. We wanted the Magic and T-Mac to just go absolutely nuts in that place. And I think he ended up scoring like 35 points and 10 assists or something like that. So he went nuts.
Yeah.
And the Magic
Seriously,
won.
does anybody want the Hawks to win? I mean, come on.
Hey, they're in
Oh,
they're
man.
in the play-in. They're in the play-in for the NBA playoffs. So again,
Yeah.
Play in. What a
Yeah.
joke.
Well,
yeah.
as we begin to wrap this up, we come off of what I deem the best episode we have ever had to a more conversational episode here tonight. As we get ready to wrap this up, because I know one gentleman over here on the pod has got to get off and get ready to go to work, and I've got to go to bed early tonight because I got to get up at 3:34 in the morning myself. Let's move on to what's upcoming at Fyffe. I'll get it rolling by saying this: we're pretty much headed to the postseason right now with high school baseball and softball. We don't have pretty much any of that info. You need to check with the school. You need to check with the baseball players, softball players to get all the postseason info. I think softball maybe has another week left in their regular season, but I know baseball is wrapped up. So get all that info from a player or any way that you can. JJ?
Hey, Adam, I do know that they play at Locust Fort, and it should be Friday afternoon, the first game for the baseball.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go,
I was about to say, I actually saw a bracket today.
Yeah.
For that. So, yeah. So,
better than me.
Yeah, so I actually saw it and I was like, oh crap, I don't know where it's at now. Yeah, talking about things coming up at Fyffe, any upcoming junior or senior, that you have an opportunity to take advantage of the ACT summer boot camp. Obviously, that's to prepare juniors and seniors to take the ACT, and classes will be weekly in July, beginning on the July 1st, and the registration will open Wednesday, May 1st. There's limited spots available, and the forms can be picked up in the high school office. The class will be taught by Mrs. Durham, and if you want to find out more about that, you can visit the Fyffe High School or the Red Devil Radio Show Facebook pages. ACT. Whew.
Don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. Greg?
Okay, there will be a parent-student orientation on Wednesday, May 1st in the cafeteria from 4:30 to 5:30 for upcoming 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. Those of y'all entering the 7th and the 8th grades and their parents are to meet in the lunchroom at 4:30, and we'll take a campus tour at 5. The 9th graders and their parents will meet at 5 in the lunchroom. Everybody will also be able to view the science fair and the elementary gym from 4:30 to 5:30.
All right, so that'll do it for this week's episode. Josh, you've been an avid listener. I don't think I've told you this. I get a weekly text from Josh, generally Thursday night into Friday, complimenting us on our podcast. Josh, before we get out of here and let you go, I cannot let you go without you telling somebody specifically what your favorite segment on this podcast has been through 10 episodes thus far.
Wow. Through the 10 episodes, I still think to this very moment, my favorite segment was the Elephant Turd 88. That's still my favorite story.
I'm telling you, Josh, you can go to that. You can go to those guys right now, and I guarantee you they can tell you about it.
I laughed for days about that story. So funny.
So, Greg, you now have a firm notice that you have 1 week to prepare more stories that'll make Josh laugh. Okay.
Gotcha. You got it. I got some. Trust me. I got some.
I bet.
Josh, I don't understand what you do to listening to us. This podcast sucks. Come on, you got any things better to do.
Hey, it's the only thing I can find that is currently talking about high school sports, and so.
Well, I will give a shameless plug to longtime friends of JJ and new friends to me and our friends and Randall and the guys over at River City Media. They are a lot more involved, I've learned over the last few weeks in high school sports, I think, than I ever realized. So you may want to give them a check out too when you're done listening to us. I'll plug them. I don't care. They share our stuff. I don't mind a bit. Go check them out. They're just guys like us with some thoughts, and they're just putting them out there. And whether you like them or don't like them, you agree or disagree. Like Coach Benefield, they couldn't care less. We don't either. We're just going to talk. We're just going to talk. Nobody pays us to do this. It's okay. It's okay. But we love it. We do. Anyway, let's wrap this puppy up. This has been Fyffe Focus presented by, let me get my paper out again, just so I make sure you give you the right phone number. Froggy Freeze. And we're going to try and get Miss Johnson on. Greg's working on that for us. She's the talker, I'm told, so we're going to get her on. You need to give Froggy Freeze a call. 256-717-7239, 256-717-7239. And by the way, just a tease. Greg and I have been talking. We talked with the guys. We might have a different type of podcast coming up in the works very, very soon. And I got to tell you, Greg, I told Beverly what it was, and she begged me. I mean, literally stood in my face, like right here, and begged me to allow her to take part in it. I'm not going to say what it is. I don't want to reveal too much. But she said, can the wives or the significant others, the girlfriends, get in on this too?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I said, I don't know why we couldn't. If we're just going to go off the rails, why not just totally go off the rails?
Yeah, I mean,
wait for
that probably put us to shame, but hey, whatever.
On that one, my wife would. So, I mean, listen, she beat me in the bracket challenge just like Josh did. Okay, just saying.
Yeah.
I'm over 1 in competition with her this year. At least
that
competition,
bracket,
I realize.
That old saying, "Beaten like a redheaded stepchild," applies to me. So, I might even be freaking adopted. I don't know.
Oh gosh. All right, we're going to get out of here. For Jeremy Johnson, Greg Mears, our special guest, Josh Ingram, we hope to get you back very, very soon. If not, you can catch Josh somewhere up in Skyline doing some PA announcing. Otherwise, catch him on Coach's Breakfast with me on Fun Radio, as well as the voice of the Brewer Patriots on WRAB 107 FM AM 1380. Josh, appreciate you always listening and then jumping on with us here this week to give us a fresh perspective on what it's like outside of Fyffe and how Fyffe compares to it. I appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah, it's been fun. I appreciate you letting me come on. I love high school sports and everything about it. So any chance I can always get to sit and talk with just other people that love it just as much, it's always a good time.
All right. Well, you be safe running over there to make some airplane windows, and we're going to be praying for you on your travels. Folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in wherever you might be. Do us a favor. Let us know what you think. Share us with your friends. Share us with your enemies, and share us with everyone else that you know. For the guys, I'm Adam Ward saying so long, everyone. May God bless you. And as always, go Big Red.